So here's a cool trick. Let's find our own public IP without using a browser. So in our command line interface, we can run the following command, kel ifconfig.me. Now, I'm not going to expose my public IP on video, I've blurred it out. However, do note that this command will work on all three operating systems, so that's Mac, Linux, and also Windows, because kel is supported on all three of those operating systems. However, do note that your public IP can change periodically, often every few hours or even every few days. And so if you were to run the same command, say tomorrow or even next week, you may notice a different output. And that's because your internet service provider uses something known as dynamic IP addressing. So you don't get to keep your public IP forever. So kel is just a simple command line interface tool which can fetch data or retrieve data from websites. And ifconfig.me is that website which can give us some basic information regarding our public IP, not our private IP, which are two different things. Now we can just visit ifconfig.me via our regular browser, like through Firefox, which I've done so already. And I've blurred a lot of this stuff out again. However, I'll show you why in a minute why this isn't best practice and why doing it through the command line interface is a lot more efficient. Now, to discover some information regarding a public IP, such as the owner or the organization that owns the IP, you can run the following command on Linux. So whois with parentheses inside, we can see the same command that we just ran before. So if you remember from high school math, you'll recall how anything inside the parentheses run first. So we're essentially running this command first, which gives us our public IP, and then using the $sign, it gets rid of this command and it just keeps our public IP. So essentially what's running is whois followed by our public IP. And whois is another command line tool which just gives us information regarding our public IP. So this command will print all sorts of information about your internet service provider and the IP allocation. However, again, for this demo, I won't be showing you the output. However, what we can do is we can output or extract certain bits of information from this command's output. So to filter for those specific fields within this command's output, we can use something known as a pipe, so that anything that is output from this command on the left hand side is fed to the right hand side as input. So this command will give us output information about our IP, and then we're feeding that as input to the right hand side. So on the right hand side, we're going to use a tool known as grep, which, much like how you would run Control F or Command F on your device to filter for certain words or text, we can use grep to also achieve that. However, we're going to use another version known as egrep, which just means extended grep, so it has more features. Now, by default, grep is case sensitive, so country with a capital C is treated differently from country with a lowercase c. So from this output here, we'll get a bunch of information such as the organization, who owns the IP, or where it was assigned from, etc. And we don't want to have to know if they've used a capital letter to start with each field or lowercase letters. So let's just ignore all of that by using a flag here, I. So I for ignore. And now we can filter for some of those fields that we want to find. So let's filter for the organization. We can use double or single quotes here. It doesn't matter. If we want to search for more fields, we can just use another pipe here. And we can write our second field, such as country. However, I'm not going to show you my country. I would prefer not to. So we'll just search for org here, which is organization. And there you go. Now that we've run our previous commands, we can now scan a domain that we have permission to scan. So scanme.nmap.org is a open domain that we have access to test nmap commands. Here I'm going to use a command known as dig, which is domain information groper, and I'm going to put that domain in, so scanme.nmap.org. And we get a few bits of information about this domain here. However, we're going to use a flag here to obtain only the relevant stuff. So we want to just obtain our public IP. or not our public IP, but scanme.mmap.org's public IP. So we'll write short plus short, and we'll get our public IP for scanme.mmap.org. Now we could also use NSLOOKUP to find the public IP for scanme.nmap.org. However, NSLOOKUP doesn't have a flag like dig, which is plus short, which gives us just the IP for this domain. So if I were to run that same command to get us the same output, we get the same result. However, look at the command. The command is by far less efficient. And so dig is essentially like NSLOOKUP, just a lot more efficient because we have access to those flags. So now you know how to find your own public IP and also scan for network information such as from scanme.mmap.org using only command line interface tools. Just a disclaimer that a lot of these commands probably won't work on MacBook and also Windows, but definitely on Linux they should work. And so please do try these on your machine and let me know how you go in the comments. Thank you.